For Day 3 Notes in Geometry, Unit 8, the topic is trigonometry, and it asks, what is trig? So if you watch the video that's prior to this as an introduction, it talks about how it's basically studying of triangles, measuring triangles. So what are we measuring? We're measuring the sides, side lengths, and the angle measurements. So that would be 6 parts, 3 sides, 3 angles. As you can see in this picture here that we have a right triangle. So when we do trig for geometry, we're always going to be using a right triangle. So there are 3 types of trigonometry ratios: sine, cosine, and tangent. So for sine, you use the ratio of the leg opposite the angle to the hypotenuse. So if I look from angle A, I would look for the opposite side, which is A, and I would look for the hypotenuse, which is C, because it's across from the right angle. So from angle A, sine would be little a over little c. From angle B, opposite of angle B would be the little b, and then the hypotenuse, so B over C. In cosine, it says the ratio of the leg adjacent to the angle to the hypotenuse. So from cosine A, the adjacent side is B. The hypotenuse is still going to be that letter C. So no matter what, we know that this is the hypotenuse. So for cosine, I'm going to say B over C. From angle B, the adjacent side would be A over your hypotenuse C. For tangent, the ratio of the leg opposite the angle to the leg adjacent to the angle. So from A, I'm going to go opposite over the adjacent. So A over B. From tangent angle B, opposite is B over adjacent A. So B over A. So it is pretty hard to remember, like sine goes with opposite and hypotenuse, cosine goes with adjacent and hypotenuse, etc. So what we've come up with is a little mnemonic device. So we would say SOH. That would mean sine equals opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is CAH. So cosine equals adjacent over hypotenuse. And then tangent is TOA, for tangent equals opposite over adjacent. And we call that SOHCAHTOA. A way to remember that could be some old hippie came around here tripping over apples. And that goes along with their SOHCAHTOA. Okay, right there. So I'm going to refer back to that quite a bit when I figure out the ratios for example 1A. So it's given each trig ratio as a fraction in simplest form. Okay, so what I'm going to do is from A, I'm going to use a pencil so I can erase, but from angle A, I want to label my opposite, my adjacent, and my hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse is pretty easy. Across from the right angle. From A, 5 is opposite, and adjacent would be 12. So for sine A, opposite over hypotenuse would be 5 over 13. And that cannot reduce, so I'm just going to leave it 5/13. Okay, for cosine, we're doing AH, so adjacent over hypotenuse. And then for tangent, opposite over adjacent, so 5/12. So none of those have to reduce or simplify, so that's it. But then if I do this from angle C, 12 is no longer adjacent. It would be opposite. So I'm going to have to flip these around here. So from angle C, 12 is my opposite, and 5 is my adjacent. The hypotenuse would obviously stay the same, because the right angle is still angle B. So sine, opposite over adjacent, opposite over hypotenuse, so 12 over 13. Cosine, from C is adjacent over hypotenuse, so 5/13. And then from angle C, to do your tangent, you're doing opposite over adjacent, so 12/5. Alright, part B, very similar. Okay, so what I would do is going from angle X, I would label what I know. So across from X is side 9, that's my opposite. 12 is my adjacent. And then my hypotenuse would be right here, but I need to find that because it's not given to me. Since it's a right angle, we can use Pythagorean theorem to figure that out. So I'm going to do 9 squared plus 12 squared equals, we'll call that C squared. Okay, so if we solve this, we get 225, and the square root of 225 is 15. So my hypotenuse is 15. Okay, now I can go ahead and fill in my fractions. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So from X, opposite over hypotenuse would be 9/15. And 3 can divide evenly into 9/15 3/5 times. Okay, then cosine would be adjacent over hypotenuse, and 3 can also go into that 4/5 times. Then tangent would be opposite over adjacent, which would be 9/12, and that can reduce to 3/4. Okay, moving on to W, angle W. From angle W, 9 is going to be our adjacent. And 12 will be our opposite. Okay, so for sine, opposite over hypotenuse, so 12/15. Reduces to 4/5. Okay, from cosine W, adjacent, which is 9, over hypotenuse, which is 15, that's 3/5. And then tangent would be opposite 12 over 9, and that would be 4/3. Alright, so that is pretty much your intro into sine, cosine, tangent, and how to set up your ratios.